Carfax Crate Curse, Historical Hauntings of Liberty State Park, Clean Narration, Expanded Edition. What if the serene pathways of Liberty State Park conceal a chilling secret? The skyline looks close enough to touch. Couples coast past on rented bikes, and gulls heckle the ferries. But under every bench, every rail, every blade of marsh grass, the ground keeps its own ledger. For decades, whispers have floated along this waterfront about odd echoes, careful shadows, and a box no one wants to admit they moved. Tonight, we open that ledger. We follow the rumor that knots them together. The Carfax Crate. You think you know Liberty State Park? Think again. Forget the postcard view. Forget the brochures. The park stretches across land that wasn't always land. Mudflats raised by ambition, rails, and war. And the past here doesn't just sit quietly and wait to be remembered. It paces. It tests your voice. And if you don't mind it, it answers back. I start where most stories pretend to end, at the water. Between the ferries to Ellis Island and the long sash of the promenade, the past arrives in wakes and leaves in fog. Before tracks and terminals and families with paper tags on their coats, this was Lenape shoreline. Shallow, honest, tidal. Then came centuries that taught the tide new tricks. Colonial gunsmoke over the bay, canals and fill dirt, warehouse lights like second suns, railyards that braided steel into destiny. This is where East met West under a timetable, where the immigrant tide stepped onto a platform and became a schedule. The Central Railroad of New Jersey Terminal rose with a clock that told more than time. Men rode in on steam and rode out on hope, and the acres beneath their boots remembered everyone who didn't make the next train. That's the part of the park most visitors skip. They point their cameras at the statue, as they should, and miss the footprints under the weeds. People died here, injuries on the switching lines, warehouse fires that burned hot and brief, falls from cranes, 1,000 small tragedies that never earned a plaque, and one big one. Not far from where the harbor now keeps its peace, an explosion that rattled windows in 2 states and convinced the water to learn new words for grief. So when we talk about hauntings, I don't mean a pair of glowing eyes. I mean a ground that keeps replaying decisions, yours, mine, and the ones made for us, until somebody speaks the right sentence. Which brings us to the crate. The first time I heard the story, I thought it was one more Jersey tall tale with a British coat of paint. Long ago, a marked crate came in light on a ship that had no business in these channels. The stencils on its side didn't list beef or bric-a-brac. They said Whitby, and below that, destination, Carfax. Old-timers muttered that it carried soil required. Who ships soil like medicine? Dockhands, even the ones who laugh at superstition, don't like cargo that insists on sunrise and smells like a garden without flowers. The crate passed. Everyone who touched it tried to forget it. And still, through break bulk and forklifts and container stacks, the rumor clung like pitch. Whenever the park goes quiet, whenever the gulls fall silent at once for no reason, someone says the word Carfax like a splinter in their tongue. You can build a park on a railyard, but the railyard lives under it. The promenades are laid across the memory of tracks. The museum exhibits skip the nights when tug whistles sounded like names, and the fog carried voices it had no right to keep. In maintenance sheds and storage units tucked along Communipaw Avenue, old manifests still curl in file drawers that don't like to be opened. On one of them, so the story goes, someone found a misprint that wasn't a misprint. Carfax, inked twice, destination Bristol. and then slashed out, redirected to Jersey. Under contents, a careful hand wrote only Earth. What does that have to do with hauntings? Everything. Because whether or not you ever set eyes on this crate, you can feel the errand it came to run. In parks like this, where the ground is stitched from the pieces of a dozen lives, buried requests trouble the skin of the earth. A box that insists on being carried into a country is just another way the past asks to be invited again. You want eyewitness accounts? All right. A ranger closing the rail terminal swears the echo in the concourse sometimes arrives before your footstep. A cyclist taking the long way home hears a single knock beneath the boat ramp at low tide. 3 taps when the cloud cover takes the sun. None when daylight strikes the pilings clean. A videographer shooting across the cove gets fog that won't settle into frame. Families out for Sunday tell you they smell cloves near the harbor. Cloves and old iron on windless afternoons. A fisherman pulling night lines swears he saw a hand. No blood, only dark soil. Slide off the ramp and vanish without ripple. And if you're unlucky enough to haul your dolly past a row of storage renters on Communipaw, you might see something you'll pretend was a tarp. A box big as a coffin, tarred, nailed in a cross, stenciled with a name that isn't a name for here. Patterns? They favor the in-between. Dawn that looks undecided. Overcast that eats the sun just when you reach the water. The hours the park isn't crowded enough to save you with witnesses, and isn't empty enough to let you call it imagination. If you bring salt because your grandmother taught you to, you won't use it. You'll carry it home open and feel it clump without damp. If you press your ear to the rail by the terminal clock, you'll swear you hear a timetable flip in a language you don't speak anymore. Arrivals, departures, admissions, refusals. Tick, 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 like teeth counting. But listen, you don't have to chase rumors to stand on a curse. The Carfax Crate story threads through Liberty State Park because the park is built on invitation. This is the pier you took when you wanted a new country. This is the platform you stood on to meet a cousin last seen as a name on a ship manifest. This is the terminal clock that said you made it, and the conductor that said not today. The ground learned to welcome and to refuse. It still speaks oath languages. A retired switchman told me he could tell when the rails were listening. Steel holds a memory of weight, he said. On certain wet mornings, the decommissioned tracks shimmer with ghost grease. And if you stand quiet between the lines, the far-off tremor you feel isn't a train. It's the choice a man made not to step forward, or the choice a woman made to sell her ring, or the choice a guard made to look away. The ground, he said, remembers permissions. There are papers, real ones and wrong ones. A clipping about foreign freight detained for inspection. The same summer a British ship made an odd call along the Hudson. A pencil note in a warehouse ledger. Soil required. Keep from light. A photograph you can't place until a historian points to the skyline and says, that's before this. That's when the tracks still bit the water. A customs officer's Maijin scribble, unusual packing, refused daylight. You can convince yourself the crate was metaphor. You can call it a superstition born from night shift boredom. Yet the paperwork won't be the thing that convinces you. The dock will. Stand at the boat launch and watch the water pretend to be flat. The park's polite. It will let you think you're safe. Then the tide will shrug the way someone does when they're about to say something you don't want to hear. The ramp will knock once. You'll tell yourself it's metal waking. It will knock again. You'll say it's your keys hitting the railing. The third time, You'll remember a rule you didn't know you knew. Don't give the river the word it's asking for, because that's how the crate hunts, through language. Every legend here is about permission. The Ellis ferries take people someplace you still have to be admitted. The rails promised west, but only after someone punched your ticket. Even the breeze off the harbor has a way of asking, "May I?" And somewhere under that polite grammar, a box that once rode the old harbor into this place still listens for a mouth to say the wrong thing at the waterline. It doesn't need your fear. It needs your courtesy misplaced. By late afternoon, the park pretends to be ordinary. Kids run the length of the empty sky memorial and make the steel sing, turning grief into game for a minute, because that's what kids do to keep adults alive. Joggers trace the old pier lines as if muscles remember rails. Then a cloud hems the sun, and every gull on the rail turns its head the same direction. That's when the little accidents happen. Modern encounters look like accidents. A jogger switches lanes because a shadow at the edge of the cove walks down the fence, hand over hand, where there are no hands to be had. A couple finds their picnic table dusted with grit after a still night. Grit that smells like greenhouse earth and tastes like pennies when the wind catches your teeth. A drone operator films a perfect sweep across the terminal, and later, on the edit, finds a smear that climbs the lighthouse ladder of a light that isn't there. A wedding party taking photos on the platform asks for a second take because in the first, the bride's veil has a handprint in soil when she swears she didn't lift it. Investigators haul EMF meters and thermal cams, and the park, kind as ever, gives them readings. Some warps in air, a cold shape beside the old clock. They go home with footage of fog shaped like decisions. The park gives them just enough to make them careful, and not enough to make them stop. If you ask them what they think the crate is, they'll split. Half say artifact, half say allegory. A tug captain told me the river dislikes liars. We feel it in the prop wash, he said. Tide's saying one thing, wind says another, and the bottom's got its own opinion. Then there's this. He tapped the chart where the old pier footings linger like vertebrae, where she knocks 3 times when there's cloud, and won't knock at all when there's honest sun. I don't put crew ashore there after dark. Not 'cause I'm scared, because I don't want their mouths learning bad manners. There's a storage row along Communipaw, the kind with unit numbers that look temporary even when they're permanent. On some nights, the fluorescents die in sequence, motion sensors having opinions they shouldn't. Boxes shift inside without rats. We had one, a renter told me, nailed in a cross, tar thick as cake, stenciled like a joke. I left it alone. Came back morning, it had moved itself 4 feet. You tell me how. He laughed like he was proud of his own restraint. He didn't open it. He did place a line of salt around it, then felt childish and swept it away. He hasn't slept well since. Here's the truth I promised, the one that changes how you walk here. The Carfax Crate may have been wood and iron once, with tar and nails set in a cross and soil tamped hard under pitch. It may even still ride a dolly in someone's locker, waiting for a day with more cloud than sun. But the curse the crate carries isn't locked to boards. Carfax is a name for any box we use to smuggle grief past daylight. Every place with a record of arrivals and rejections builds one. This park, more than most, learned to store the parts of history we didn't want to claim. The blown-out nights you can still hear if you put your ear to the rail. The labor that didn't go home. The families that got separated on paper and stayed that way in the air. The explosions we teach children to call accidents. The pallets of earth asked to be welcomed at a time of day when nobody was strong enough to say no. When you stand at the empty sky memorial and see the missing tower's silhouette cut into steel, you feel an absence shaped like teeth. That is honest grief, named, held, given a place. The crate is different. It teaches a city to hide certain sorrows in a box and then politely invite the box into new rooms. So the hauntings here sound like permission. The knocks on the ramp wait for cloud cover. You catch the word "please" at the corner of the wind. You didn't imagine it. Your phone suddenly tries to open its microphone when you walk past the spot where the pier ends. It's not about a box that needs a ride. It's about trauma that wants a mouth. And mouths are doors. A family from out of town asked me if the park is safe after hearing the stories. I told them the truth. It's safer than most places because it teaches you rules. Don't toss names around like bread to gulls. Don't play host to everything that asks. Don't listen to water the same way you listen to a friend. It bargains differently. And if you feel a politeness rise in your throat at the wrong moment, if the word "come" tries to use your tongue like a bridge, bite it. This park understands no better than any church. It understands not invited best of all. A few winters ago, I followed the rumor to the rail terminal at dusk. The concourse holds chill the way brass holds fingerprints. Voice carries too well under that clock. You hear yourself from angles that don't match your mouth. I walked the platform lines, and as the light failed, I could feel the old timetable breathe. Not superstition, air expanding in steel, but the breath had rhythm. And between the inhales, I heard 3 small knocks. Not loud, not dramatic. Enough to count. I stood still. The word "please" offered itself like a polite cough at the back of a meeting. I pressed my tongue to my teeth and said nothing until the sun made a single finger through cloud and put it on the iron like blessing. The feeling left the rails. I left the terminal the way you leave a church after hours. Backward, not turning your back on the altar. That night, my shoes smelled like a nursery and a tool chest had shaken hands. I shook them out on my own stoop, and dirt like coffee grounds fell onto my welcome mat. I keep a broom by the door now. A superstition? Maybe. Or housekeeping after a visit. If you want the most ordinary proof, here it is. Ask anyone who's worked the park for a decade. Not the historian, the maintenance crew. The food truck by the terminal on calm days when the wind has called in sick. Ask them about the hours between overcast and rain. Ask them about the jar of cloves some of them keep near the register. The way a handful of cloves in a pocket can keep your mouth honest. Ask them about batteries that die only by the ramp, and only when the tide is neither honest flood nor honest ebb. Ask them if they've ever brought a crate home on a dolly that wasn't theirs, and watch their face when they say no. You're thinking, surely this is just a story, a park layered with history, a waterfront that does what waterfronts do, a few suggestible minds. Good. Keep that skepticism. Bring it with you when you visit. Let it hold your mouth shut at the right moments. But also bring respect. If you visit at dawn, greet the water, but don't make promises. If you cut past the terminal to the green, don't whisper the magic words we use with doors. If you feel your throat preparing to be helpful, close it. You're not a fairy. If you find a crate, any crate, nailed in a cross, tar sweet in your nose, with soil leaking like it wants to introduce itself, don't be a hero. Don't be a host. Starve the story of your invitation, and it will go looking for someone else's. If you carry a camera, film the skyline. If you feel drawn to the ramp, Point your lens elsewhere. If your microphone hears a word you didn't say, mute it. A story that relies on your mouth doesn't get to use your equipment. If you bring children, teach them the game of saying no the way you teach them to look both ways. Make it fun. Count the gulls and say not invited when they line up like judges. Toss crumbs to the ones who make eye contact, and keep your words for the ones who don't. And if you return home and swear you left with more grit in your pockets than you arrived with, if your shoes have that smell of greenhouse and pennies, shake them out on your own threshold and say the sentence this park taught me: not invited. The land here understands the language. It will translate for you if you've forgotten how. You want more history? All right. The rails stretched from here to coal country and farther. Every timetable was a row of choices organized into obedience. Immigration officers stamped paper that held names like breath holds a body. Some names made it. Some were cut short at the edges to fit American tongues. The cut pieces do not go nowhere. They fall into the ground like filings and align to the strongest magnet. When you feel yourself wanting to supply a word for the river, when a polite syllable rises like a fish, know that the filings are trying to make you into a compass pointing to a box. The industrial years fed the harbor with iron and careless light. Men worked cranes that lifted everything except their own grief. A fire in a warehouse teaches wood to scream like a man. A night watchman writes a report with hands that shake and never stops hearing the way glass falls. These aren't ghosts the way you think. They are permissions that were granted too easily and retracted too late, replaying themselves at the edge of a city that prefers celebration. That's the difference between a jump scare and a grammar. A jump scare wants you to flinch. Grammar wants you to speak, and to be careful what you speak. The Carfax Crate Curse isn't a ghoul in a box. It's a rule about doors and mouths and cross-hatched nails that make no into a plank. Now tell me, what did you feel the last time you stood at the waterline here? Did the ramp knock once, twice, 3 times? Did the wind use the word you thought you were done with? Did your phone open its microphone without your touch? Did your camera's autofocus chase a shape that climbed where there was nothing to climb? Drop your story below. Share the spots without making them a map that tugged at your voice. And when you come back to this park, come back with new eyes. Watch your mouth. And if the ground asks to be adored for what it used to carry, give it silence instead. We'll keep digging. There are files no one likes to label. There are photographs that don't age when they should. There's a dolly with salt staining the wheels that someone is still pretending not to notice. There's a ledger page with Carfax written twice and crossed once that will surface when a certain cabinet is opened at the wrong time of day. There's a tug captain who keeps cloves in his pocket and refuses to say why. There's a ranger who has learned the difference between an echo and an invitation. There's a couple who left the park with a handprint in soil on a veil and never told the photographer. There's a box that may or may not be wood anymore. There's a city that knows better than to say yes. Until then, we leave the crate where it belongs, unnamed, unwelcomed, unrolled. The sun is out. The harbor is honest, and if you listen closely, you can hear the ground practice saying no. And if, one overcast afternoon, you find yourself standing at the boat launch, hands in pockets, mind making room for a word that would make the water polite, practice with me. Close your lips against the syllable the wind is nudging. Feel your tongue pressed to your teeth like a door braced against weather. Count the knocks if there are any. Then say the sentence out loud, So gently, the river can mistake it for respect, not invited. The tide will understand. The rails will relax their breath. The gulls will complain because gulls complain about everything. The park will remain a park. The ledger under your feet will close its page and wait, patient as iron, for the next passerby who needs teaching. And the box, whatever it is now, wherever it keeps itself, will go hungry one more day.